welcome to the webinar on hyperconnectivity and information overload. To briefly introduce myself, my name is Lena Peterson. I'm a consultant in MindFirst, and today I will be the host of this webinar with the support of my colleague Jane. Just before we get started, a few rules. That is, please kindly mute yourself when you're not talking so that we don't have too much background noise. And we really enjoy when you have your video on, but we understand that if you have a poor internet quality, then just try to turn it off so that you at least get the sound through. This also means that even though I'll try to have my video on all the time, if I have a technical issue, I will turn it off in order to get through to you. Then during the webinar, please do use the chat to write down your questions and even greet each other, either in private or in public. Just make it as interactive and lively as possible. Before we get started, for those of you who don't know us yet, I just want to briefly introduce MindFirst. MindFirst is a change management company with about 20 years of experience in the public as well as private sector. We serve all companies and institution sizes in 4 main areas. We deal with strategy activation and rollout hereof, and we work on employee engagement and empowerment. Then we often work on digitalization projects and process optimization, and on cultural change and anchoring hereof. We have the advantage of being a multidisciplinary team so that we can work cross-functional. And further, we really enjoy working very creatively together and also to communicate visually, to always focus on the individual and the human side of business. Now, let's get started. What is hyperconnectivity? Before we really start, I want to warm up with a small poll. It's just a one question. And it is, do you think you could do without your mobile phone and or smartphone for 48 hours? It's a single answer and it's anonymous. So don't feel afraid. Just if Jane will launch the poll, then you can answer it and please submit the answer. I'm curious to see how we're doing.
And we've just been joined by Benjamin and Diane. So welcome to them this morning.
How are we doing? Are people answering?
Nobody's voted yet.
Nobody's voted. They are considering if they can live without their mobile phone or smartphone.
I did.
Oh, but it tells me nobody's voted. Can I end it and launch it again?
You can try, yeah. Maybe there's a technical issue. Otherwise, we'll take it as a discussion.
Yeah, there's a relaunch. Right, I think you might have to vote again. Sorry about that, but
I won't change my answer.
Don't change it. It has to be the spontaneous first instinct answer.
But we seem to have a problem because it still tells me that nobody's voted.
No, it's me. I think I'm co-host also, and I have the answer.
Oh, you have the control, Aurélie.
Yeah.
You logged in as well. Okay. Well, then I would say that you, Aurélie, and Jane, you do it together because I can't see anything while sharing the slides.
Okay, so one person told us yes, no problem at all. One person no, and 3 maybe, but it would be challenging.
Okay, great.
113, sorry.
Well, I think that it is what we often see, that people, they wouldn't really be happy to live without their mobile phone for a couple of days. Maybe it's easier, it would be easier at the weekend, but during the week, definitely not. But thank you a lot. This was really a question that was asked by TNS Ilres in 2018. So it is a real-time question, and back then, it was unimaginable for about a quarter of the population in Luxembourg to have be without their mobile phone. The majority, however, could imagine it, but 50% of them were not entirely sure. So you could already see back then that most people were really, really addicted to their phones. And within this survey, 38% of the population between 16 and 24 years could not imagine it at all. And this also shows that the younger we are and so on, we grow up with it and we just need to be connected. It's part of our daily life and it has an impact on our behavior and everything we do. So today, 2 years later, we don't have the results, but it has surely changed, especially also with the remote work situation that has come this year. Now, what is hyperconnectivity? It's a term that was invented by Canadian social scientists Annabel Quanhars and Barry Wellman. And it was arising from their studies of person-to-person and person-to-machine and machine-to-person communication in networked organizations and networked societies. It really refers to the use of multiple means of communication, such as email, the instant messaging, telephone, face-to-face contact, but also the web information services. Now, it all sounds great, but it has a real impact on our lives. In a recent study from the World Economic Forum, it was written that by 2020, there would be 50 billion network devices, and that the level of connectivity would have profound social, political, and economic consequences and increasingly form part of our everyday lives, from the cars we drive and medicines we take to the jobs we do and the governance systems we live in. What they, of course, didn't foresee was this impressive increase of remote work that we've had this year. So let's have a look at that. Remote work and the hyperconnectivity. A lot of us are still working from home or partially working from home. Some know that they will be going back to the office at some point. Others think, oh, we could work partially from home, partially in the office, depending on the days and what we need to do. And some would really like to just stay at home and avoid the traffic. So there's been a lot of requests and also allowances to continue to work at home, but it does have an impact. It has increased a lot lately, but what does it mean to work from home? In a static definition, it means that it's the use of information and communication technologies when you're working outside the company premises, and this work outside the company has to be regular and habitual. In 2020, 7% were working from home, whereas in 2018, this had increased to 20%. Today, of course, it is a completely different number, and it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. What has to be said is that in those percentages, it is counted on a weekly basis, but the duration varies a lot from 4 hours to 32 hours per week. So it is a very different reality how people work. Now, let's have a look at what the remote work then has done and what it has taught us about hyperconnectivity, because it has certainly flagged a lot of things and made things visible that we didn't realize before. So some of the points are really that we have seen that people multitask and they have a partial attention. They never only focus on one thing, they are constantly connected on several devices. So the focus is lacking. Then there's also that people have experienced that they have so many different channels open and they have a difficulty in tracing information because of this. Others have realized that there are no borders between home and work. So that means that you don't have a work-life balance if you are not really strict with yourself and stop working at a specific time, close your laptop until the next day, and also stop answering emails from your mobile device. So this has also led to some exhaustion or burnout in worst case, and also to digital fatigue. Another point is that people have really lost the contact with the colleagues. They have lost this information flow of both informal and formal contact. So if you didn't really work on this with your team, then you suddenly realize that you were on different levels of information. So if we look at hyperconnectivity, the remote work has flagged this, but of course there's both opportunities and challenges in general. So let's have a look at them. The opportunities of hyperconnectivity, let's start with the positives, is that globally on a strategic level, we can transfer data and we have availability of data that we didn't have before. So we can collect and share on a larger scale, and we can identify consumer behaviors and trends much more easily, which of course helps the new marketing, where it's location-based, and we have about 80% of the interaction that happens online via mobile devices today. From a communication point of view, we have quite a new channels because we can work across countries and time zones. So this is an opportunity, and we can not only write emails, we can see each other face to face, like at the moment. And then it's faster, it's much more efficient and time relevant. The only question is it actually then also concise? Because this is where the overload comes in. Then from a cultural point of view, this has to, of course, first of all, support the strategy. So we have to optimize this with digital tools, which is on its way. And it gives us opportunities to create new values and new ways of doing, break old habits, and create new ones. Then the employee engagement side is another important factor, because in remote teams, you really have to work on this. And here, the interconnectedness and the digital world has given us platforms where we can measure how we are doing from today till tomorrow, and also look how to improve. And of course, we can collaborate in different ways with tools online, which is so much easier and sometimes also fun to learn. Where there's opportunities, there's also challenges. So if we look at the challenges of the hyperconnectivity, there are quite a few. And this is that in general, you need to have a completely different overview, and you have to change your strategy, because otherwise it will lead to collaborative overload. And this means that people are so much more in meetings today than they were before, and they lack the overview. Then you have to change the leadership skills, because it's a different way of leading people in remote settings. And when you have data available, you should use this to your advantage in order to lead in a better way and serve better. Then you have communication overload. This unfortunately can lead to a lack of concentration, and you have disconnectedness all the time, that people, they don't disconnect from their devices, they're always on and they never take a break, which of course then leads to errors, confusion, stress, fatigue. So all this is really something we have to really look into. Then we just had this partial attention from the remote work setting that we have noticed this year. And that is very scary to see that 70% of people actually admit to multitask and do parallel processing, which means, of course, that this can also lead to more errors and also to exhaustion, because they're not focusing anymore and cannot concentrate. From an employee point of view, it can lead to disengagement when you are overloaded with the information and you're always on because you cannot compute anymore. And then there's also this problem of not being able to identify with the culture and to understand what all the information is about and why you're being bombarded. So this can then also lead to this lack of autonomy, and you can feel that you don't have the competences anymore. So, and then of course, worst case, it leads to health and well-being issues that we will also look a bit more into, because let's have a look at the overload of information and the symptoms that occur when you are always hyperconnected and interconnected. So if we look at it from the dark side, this overload brings a decrease in productivity, and it costs companies millions per year. So just to give you a few statistics, in 1970s, executives, they received fewer than 1,000 outside phone calls and emails and faxes, etc. per year. Today, in a similar position, an executive receives about 30,000 emails and other communications per year. So there's been a huge increase only in a couple of years. This also shows that we're much more connected and we spend much more time in meetings. And there's a study that has showed that there's 300,000 hours spent a year on weekly executive meetings, and some of them are really not leading to anything, so they're unnecessary. This is 16 hours per week that managers, they spend just on managing their emails and attending such meetings. So this is a huge cost, which is about $30 billion a year, according to an Atlassian study. So it's really something we have to look into. The worst thing is that it leads to disengagement, and a Gallup survey has found that employees are really either partially disengaged or disengaged at work due to hyperconnectivity. And here you have such a severe number as 87%. Then you have, last but not least, the mental health issue and the physical health issue. And there it has been identified that about 36% of managers say that they're suffering from poor health due to the information overload that they experience in their workplace. So this is really a creepy part of the hyperconnectivity. And it is really something that happens to us without conscious effort on our part. So I just want to let you unmute yourself, or you can use the chat, but I would really like to know what you think are the main symptoms of hyperconnectivity. And here, please unmute yourself. You can, maybe it's from your own experience, or it can be colleagues that you have seen, or just what you think would happen to someone who is suffering from this hyperconnectivity and information overload.
Hi, this is Benjamin speaking.
Yes?
Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Sorry, so that's one of the sentences that we heard the most in the last months, right? It's probably a symbol of this hyperconnectivity. Just to share some experience, I think it's the fact that there seems no ending to it, and in the activities, but which is okay at a certain level, but it goes too fast from one step to the other one, and one has no time between two activities to take the time to think, reflect on it, and act on it.
Yeah.
Because meetings are getting so easy to do. One person jumps from one meeting to the other meeting without moving from his or her desk.
Absolutely.
And then at the same time, well, you receive more and more, or you discuss more and more potential activities. And at the end of the day, you end up doing them during another conference call.
Absolutely. So you don't have the time to switch off.
Yep.
Yeah. And also change subject within your own mind. Yeah.
Yeah, or even to process things, right?
Yes.
Because when you have a meeting, it's because you decide to discuss something with someone to act on it. And then at the end of the day, well, you need time to act.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have a comment? Maybe either in the chat. I don't know if you see anything, Jane.
Fabian said problems focusing leading to lack of efficiency.
Yeah. Lack of efficiency because you don't know what information need where. Yeah.
And a lack of big picture outlook.
Yeah. You miss on out on the overview. Excellent. Do we have anything else?
Distraction. Renata said distraction. And Diane, difficulties finishing task, jumping from a task to another.
Absolutely, just multitasking again and not having the attention span to actually work on it. Anything else? There's someone who wants to say something? No? Okay, then we will continue. You have mentioned quite a few. I'm just going to list up some of them because it is absolutely true that the attention span suffers and that we don't, we can't concentrate, we don't have the time to finish, and this meeting overload is a true challenge, and especially in a remote setting. All this can lead to mental and digital fatigue because at some point we just cannot absorb anymore. Then this leads to depression because we don't know how to deal with it. And we suddenly start becoming more aggressive and we have fewer eyes on our own behavior. We don't realize the own mistakes we do, but we of course always see the ones that the others do. Then it leads, this stressful feeling leads to about 70% of parallel processing and task execution, as we've already seen, which is super, super dangerous because that again encourages the stress levels to go up, and in worst cases, it leads to a burnout. Now, if we take it from there, we then become disengaged, demotivated. We don't know how to deal with it, even though from the beginning, we actually do like what we do at our work. We enjoy our job, but it's just too much. This leads us to often not respecting other people, even ourselves we don't respect, we don't take the time out. And we start to communicate very badly or use the wrong channels or the wrong wording without noticing it. Then there's the big issue, and that is the attention span, because it takes about 12 minutes to get focused on something, to really get into the flow of a work. And then we are interrupted every 8 minutes. So it's never going to work because we always receive something new. This can lead to us being addicted because we know we have to check everything all the time because there's always new information coming in. And that means that about 75%, they have their smartphone within reach 24/7, basically go to bed with it and they wake up with it, not only using it as an alarm clock, but also to read the news or see if new emails have come in because they are fearing to miss out. So this new concept that stresses us even more has come to life. Being on the screen all the time leads us to a disrupted sleep. So we cannot sleep anymore, or we have a poor quality of sleep. So we're not rested the next day, which of course then leads to physical health issues. This can be anything from small issues, or it can be weight gains, it can be pains, it can be high blood pressures. There's so many different ways our bodies react, but it is real. We could, of course, assume that everyone should just look after their health and have that responsibility themselves. However, today, it is not expected anymore only to be ourselves. It should also be from work and the manager taking care of the employees because there is a fast information flow going on. So let's have the concept of digital leaders, because those are some that have really exceeded extraordinary and know how to deal with all this in a different way than the traditional companies. Just before introducing it, there is something that is very interesting, and that is there was a study where 75% of executives, they're more worried about the competition from existing companies that are launching digital products than they are about the digital startups. This is something that goes against all of those disruption rules. However, it is real that you are always looking at the competition and seeing what they're doing because you want to be on the lead and in the digital way as well. However, wanting to develop digitally, it's also interesting that the same executives said, and that was about 50% of them said that they had introduced digital skills training. So a lot of them have not. They don't think it's important. And only 19% of them expect that they will reshape their business according to the digital world. So this is very strange findings when you look at how we are changing the world with digital tools, and also how the tech-savvy companies are dealing with it. What is important to say is that all the technical companies, they have realized one thing, and that is that the success of their companies is less on the technical side, it is on the people side. So what does this mean? There is an Oxford economic study that has found a direct correlation between the elite groups of respondents from high-performing companies, the digital winners, and the organizational practices and results. So what they focus on are three business aspects. They focus on leadership, diversity, and then technology. So as you can see, two of them are really purely human. Then the leadership, here they really focus on partnerships and teamwork to empower the employees, to make them more autonomous, and to be able to deal with all the data that they collect. Then you have that they are much more transparent around all the decisions and changes that are made, and they listen much more to their people and to see what they can say about things. This means that they use collaboration platforms to determine the expectations and needs, not only, of course, of employees, but also of customers, in order to adapt and move quickly and be agile. And they are much more proficient in facilitating this collaboration by fostering internal partnerships, so they work cross-functionally, they co-create together, and they do not work in silos anymore. They really help each other. So let's look at what we can do ourselves in order to become much more tech savvy and deal with the hyperconnectivity. So there is a lot that goes on, but we're going to look at the 4 factors that I showed before, namely the strategy, the culture, the employee engagement, and the communication. So let's start with the strategy. And here, according to Chris Graham and Greg Kamey, that are business consultants, their answer to this question is really to use an analogy, strategy, and culture, but use digital tools. So this goes in lines with what the digital winners they work on. They're human, but they use the tools to their advantage. And they choose the tools very carefully. And when you have chosen those tools very carefully, then you have a strategy that is very clearly stated, and you can then move ahead and change your business model in order to create your new company identity, and also to put yourself in the market. Make sure that you're in the right place, and also that you develop in the right direction. With this, of course, you need the leadership skills. You need to focus on serving your people and making them collaborate and understand why they're doing things, and also that they're capable. So you have to check out that you always have the capabilities within your company, and that people are engaged and motivated to support the strategy and the vision that you have defined. This, of course, leads to improved productivity, and hopefully in the end, it leads you to success. To support the strategy, we always have to look at the culture. This is a very important topic, because without a culture, you cannot feed the strategy. What does this mean? This means that when you are working in an interconnected collaborative situation, you always have to embrace this. You have to understand that the leaders, they have to support everything you do in order to have a digital culture. You have to look at your values and see how this can support your strategy, and that it needs to be in line with today's modern world. So it needs to be values that are disciplined and engaged in an interaction on all levels. Then another point that is very important that goes back to the leadership, you have to lead by example. This means that if the culture is not to connect in the evenings, then please let your people know that it is like that, and also show them. So stop doing it yourself because it stresses them. They will think that they have to then answer immediately at 10 o'clock p.m. or on a Saturday or Sunday. So this is something that is very, very important, that you have this understanding of this protection culture so that people do not get mentally fatigued. Then you have to narrow the values and the priorities, because before the leader, he was always on the front line and he was kind of attacking the market. And today it has been that you are demonstrating the commitments by just being there, by acting and serving. So it is there's a change in the leadership and you have to share this. It's always that you have to make sure that your people can work so much that basically they can say afterwards, we did it on our own, or we did it, and they don't see you as much. You're just in the background, leading them, helping them, supporting them. Now, you have to look at the well-being, because they will not do it themselves if you are not imposing this on them. You have to show that it's okay to take care of your health, that it's okay to take a break. As it was just mentioned by you, Benjamin, just before, those meetings back to back are not healthy because we do not have the time to digest what was just said, and we do not have the time to switch and work on it, and also to get into the new topic. So deal with this, set up rules so that people know that they can take 5 minutes between meetings or 15 minutes really to calm down and also move around and have this link that they had before, walking from one meeting to the other, maybe asking questions or being mentored by a manager or something. This time needs to be integrated as well in a digital world. Then something that is scary is that in what's happening? Can you see my slides still? Yeah? Okay. There was something, Zoom just suddenly popped up. Okay, then there's a law on the right to disconnect. And this is a scary thing because in 2016 in France, there was this law that was introduced for the employees not having to work all the time, that it was okay not to answer emails in the evenings, and there was set up rules in a law. This is something that I find scary, that it's necessary, but it just shows how real it is, this information overload and this hyperconnectivity and the issues around them. So this leads us to engagement. From an engagement point of view, it's important that the company has a strategy in place in order to deal with hyperconnectivity. So they need to give the employees the clarity about the culture, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what should be expected of them, when can they switch off, and all those workflow and processes within the company, and also that they accept that they can have this time to breathe. So it's something that really needs to be told directly and very clearly. Then they have to be able to set their boundaries, and you have to talk about those values and also the purpose. And this is even more important when you work remotely, that you also talk about the purpose, that they know why something is being done. And this goes from the vision of the company down to the departments, to the individual teams, and to the individual person. They have to know why they're doing things so that they still see that they're working as a team and that they have the shared values and are moving in the same direction. Then you have to emphasize this collaboration and have this collaborative culture of sharing information and using tools in order to share it more quickly, but also in an efficient way where you have rules set up for how to do it, so that people can focus on really the key of their work and not on searching, and that they also know that they can connect and build partnerships together to be faster and provide a better result. Then you have to show them that you're mindful about this digital connectedness and that you understand the challenges by giving them time out, and be kind with them and give them daily detox hours, for example, or also have a best practice in meetings, like a minute to arrive, so that when people come, that you don't start straight away, but they can just, you know, calm down and get into the topic, either on, whether it's on Zoom or WebEx or in an in-person meeting, but still give them this time because you don't know where they came from. Maybe it was stressful. And also help them to build the resilience against it and give them tools against screen addiction as well. Encourage free time and encourage activities to build resilience. This can be everything from sport or team building to healthy eating, mindfulness, meditation, depending on what people prefer. But really try to help them with this, because this is something we very often forget when we are stressed and want to meet our deadlines. Then, of course, use engagement platforms to measure how you're doing. This is something that is really good, or check in, even if it's just a simple survey or questionnaire. It is important that they see that you also then afterwards use the data that you collect and make changes in order to improve their health and well-being, so they stay motivated and of course will deliver more for you. Now there's something that is important, and that is the communication between teams and communications in general in the organization. So let's have a look at that. With the remote work, we have seen that we have suddenly gone from being multi-channel, and what I mean with that is really this physical support, printed support that we have had in the offices, to going 100% digital. We had in-person events, now we have them digitally. It is nice to see a friendly face on a video, but it's not the same. So we have to think about the changes. We have to think about what we're missing out when we are not having the coffee machine chat or the lunch break together, because today many people, they just eat their lunch, they never share it with colleagues because they're working from home, or they don't have time, so they just want to continue working and grab a sandwich very quickly. And then there's also the physical communication, because as you know, communication is much more than just the tone and the voice and the words that are being said or what is being written in an email. It's also the body language, the friendliness, it's this feeling in the room. There's so many different things that creates a good communication that we do not have if we just write together or we only have a phone call. Then we have to give people time for the new users. They have to learn to deal with this. And this is really a learning curve, where some people, they are relatively quick in learning, others they take a bit more time. It also depends from where they come, what was the level before. So, but it's just normal that in the beginning it's a bit more slow, and then it goes quite fast, and then there is kind of a stagnation of when people have just learned how to deal with it, but give them the time and the individual time that they need. Then as a company, we really need to reinvent ourselves and always look at what is expected of us for tomorrow, because there will be changes. Also, if we go partially back to the office or full-time back to the office, there will be changes in the behaviors, there will be changes in what is expected of us, just because of the disruption we have had this year. There will, of course, be companies that are working far more remotely, and this we also have to deal with if we're working in partnerships outside our company. Then there's the new ways of working that's much more collaborative and co-creative ways, where you can use both digital tools online, but think about how this creativity boost can bring something to your company as well, and deal with this. Now, this is all good because we have so many opportunities in communicating together and sharing information through different platforms and work together, brainstorm together. However, it's very difficult to find out how to deal with it. So which channel is to use when? This is a very good question, and we need to discuss this internally in a company. We have to choose the channels that we want to use very carefully, and also to explicitly communicate which content goes in which. so that people are not lost, and we will have an easy trace of finding the communications afterwards, or for ourselves, just that we are not lost and we know exactly, okay, for this I will need that tool, etc. So this is not an exhaustive list, but just a few to show. This can be Slack that some companies use. There's also the messaging systems and Teams that you can be used, but it is really for instant messages. It is for the quick questions, the quick information for people to get on track with something with an easy response, or it is to share individually and collaborate in real time. And then it's really this immediate thing. So you can also create channels where you can share random things with your colleagues to create a bit of this belongingness for the engagement. And you can create it for important information where you just know that in this channel there's information on maybe sick leaves or whatever it is. But this is one way of doing it. Then you have to see that if it gets too long and too complicated with those instant channels, then maybe it's better to use the written email, the traditional email, that is much more for the longer information, the more critical information that is a bit more serious maybe and needs to be traced easily because you lose the track of it in Slack channels. Whereas an email, there you can really see the thread and you can find the importance of it. Further, it is also if you want to include someone externally and underline any importance. Then there is this voice talking together or having meetings together. So a phone call, this can sometimes be a good option if you see that it gets too complicated on email, then it is to grab the phone and call the person instead of sending 10 emails back and forth. And here this can then be to more sensitive topics. But if they are too sensitive, then maybe it's better to meet for a meeting where you also see the person, either person to person or today in remote work settings via conferences like Zoom or Teams or WebEx, whatever your company has chosen to work with, so that you can see the person and switch on the video and have more live experience and discussion. So this is also something that is really good for the more complex topics and where you can switch your camera on, and please do so, because it just makes it more personal and you will grasp not every sign of the body and so on, but far more than if you were just listening to a voice or reading a text. Then there is another tool, and this is like WhatsApp or messages or something like that on the phone. Some people, they prefer that you very quickly just send in a message to say, are you free? Or to get information like that. However, it is only if the people have specifically asked for it that it is a good way. Then, of course, if you are offsite and you need to get in touch to share some information immediately, then it can be an important tool. And then last but not least, if you have a very good relation with a colleague that has also developed into a friendship, then it's better to send the messages via WhatsApp or a message in that sense, if it's not work related. Now, let's look at what this all means. We have some healthy hacks for you in order to deal with hyperconnectivity and this information overload, because we really believe that it's so important. And as sunshine is the best disinfection, let's have those ideas to wrap up this webinar and also then to discuss a few takeaways afterwards. So how to embrace the digital solutions. It's really important that we analyze the company's media usage so that you understand which channels are used when, and also how people, they prefer to use it, how you work better, how it's more productive and efficient. And then also here, it's important because then you get the insights into this load that is created by managers and executives on their teams, so that you see, okay, is the team drowning or not, or are they coping with it? It's really important that they have the option to speak up and that you share this information to optimize the processes. Then you have to make a very clear use of all the collaboration platforms and the tools that you have, so that people are not lost and they all feel, first of all, that they know how to deal with them, but also that they know when to use which one. Give the feedback and get feedback. It's super important in order to improve. Collaborate on this. And then use those engagement measurement platforms in order to check in and see how people are doing. And it's important that you're always checking in and not checking up on someone. And then look into the cybersecurity, because it's so important that people's data is protected and it's shared in the right way within the rules and regulations, but also that your company is protected and you're not hacked or anything. And here it's much more of a human error often than it is a technical. So this is why it's important. From a strategic point of view, as already mentioned, really mix this analog management with the digital tools. So support everything that you do on a human level with the tools and the data that you have. And then create the visibility and discuss this. It's okay to have issues, but you then figure out how to deal with it and create new models. So diagnostics is really important. And then help people to become savvy and understand how to use the tools, that they can really embrace this data and not are overwhelmed by it, and also know how to analyze it. From a cultural point of view, as already said, it has to really support strategy. So you have to create the values again and really enforce them also digitally, and also show the purpose of going digitally and working in this interconnected world, and give people the why they're doing things. Help them to embrace the technology, support them, help them learn together with them, and be collaborative and co-creative together, using the tools to your advantage. And then, as said already, with the cybersecurity, protect their privacy. So this is really important because it's something that we very often forget when we work digitally, because we're not checking if everything is in place. But it is important that people are aware of the dangers and they know how to react if something happens. From a communication point of view, it's really important that we have the clear do's and don'ts on channels and the content, as just discussed before, so that there's no overwhelm, and maybe also to reduce all the information that flows around so that it's not misleading or that the wrong person gets it. Respect the space and time of people, give them the free time off. And remember that communication is super important, because the internal communication of a company has 66% impact on the culture and 37% impact on the financial performance. So it's really something that you have to put high on your list to make sure that people are happy with the way you communicate. Mindful listening is something that is really important. Listen to your people. And there's just one saying from Buddha, what was saying, that if your mouth is open, you're not learning. And this is something that is important for leaders to remember. Then you have to engage people. Here, again, focus on the connections and the partnerships internally across the company silos. Really make the boundaries go away. Create the partnerships also outside the company. Support people, and then give them the tools, give them the right to have a daily digital detox hour. This can be at the lunch breaks, it can be just after work, it can whatever you try to put in place with your team, but put it in place so that they really calm down. Then give them a minute to arrive from a meeting to another so that they really have the time to digest and also move on to the next topic, get their head around it, sort all the information they have. And then maybe make device-free meetings. Ask everyone to leave everything, all the tools that they don't need. If they don't need the laptop in order to discuss, maybe leave it outside or leave the phones away so that they cannot parallel process things and focus on what is happening. Give them daily strategic thinking time. Maybe this can be half an hour where they know that this time they can take to really strategically think about their work and not only having to focus on task execution. And then give them this sense of belonging, create it. And this can even be together if you have a CSR committee, ask them to support you in creating playful events, also online, digitally, to get the teams to work together, that they feel part of it, and that they don't risk this only working on their own in an individualistic way, and then in the end become overcharged. So with this in mind, I have one question as a last wrap up, and that is, what are you going to put in place today to master the hyperconnectivity? Please unmute yourself or write in the chat. Is there any of the things that you want to put in place today or take with you? Or do you have any questions maybe?
It's Fabienne here. I think personally, I'm going to try to be more strategic and take time before getting into a set of tasks to prioritize things. I think I'd find it most helpful. And I really engaged with what you said, and I find it's all very inspiring. So I take the opportunity to say thank you already.
Thank you. Very happy you could take something away. Anyone else?
There are so many good ideas. So one of those is that definitely taking a break at lunchtime. It's so easy to do that. So definitely this is what I'm going to do, which I already did, but sometimes I thought that it was not important, but apparently it is. But one thing that I wanted to tell you, it's I wrote an article on the Femme magazine, and it was about the syndrome de la cabane. Mm-hmm. It scared me because I really thought it was me, and I have to admit that I feel different when you say that when you're going back to work, how you're going to feel this type of environment. And I realized that I've changed since March, and it's quite scary because sometimes I don't recognize myself. So the syndrome of the cabane, it's really what's happening to me, and what you said about hyperconnectivity. It's a little bit a problem somehow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's important you have recognized it. That's the first step to make the change.
Yeah, maybe I didn't know until I wrote the article, and then I said, that's me. And yeah, personally, I have to work on this.
Well, it's very important that you have recognized it, and then it's afterwards then to start working on it. But the first step has been made by recognizing. So thank you for sharing that, Aurora. Anyone else, or is there any comment in the chat?
Yes, Benjamin told us change behavior and keep free time between meetings.
Yeah, schedule it. Be very consistent with it. Absolutely. Thank you.
Renata told few minutes digital detox, and I said few days.
Yeah. True. Well, it's good if you start aiming with having a few minutes, and then you can increase it. And then if you can end up with having a digital detox holiday, maybe it would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? No? If not, then I would just, if there's any questions, of course, please do also ask us, or you can also send an email afterwards. Just want to let you know that you can sign up for our newsletter on the website, and also, of course, follow us on LinkedIn to receive much more information, and also great articles that are being produced on different topics, either related to this or other change topics. And then absolutely thank you to everyone for listening and for being here today. It was really pleasant to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.